Hey everybody, welcome back to the Know and Follow podcast. Just want to say how much I appreciate you guys leaving ratings and reviews. There's been a couple. Joy to read them. Thank you so much. If you want to leave a rating or review, you can do it wherever you're listening to the podcast. Just find a rating button and tap 5 stars, and I will appreciate it. Today we have Josh March on. Now, Josh March leads our Empowered Fitness Ministry. He's the owner of Empowered Training Systems in Granite Run, but he's also a military service member. And so I brought him in. Actually, we did 2 episodes, but the first one we talked about his military service. We talked about how God called him to the military service, how God has used that time to kind of refine his faith, and the way that he processes it as a Christian, and also on the end there, kind of how to process if maybe you or someone in your family is considering military service. So hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, here's Josh. All right, Josh, thanks so much for popping in here today. Brought you in because you serve in the military. You're in the reserves. Which reserves?
The Air Force Air National Guard.
Okay, Air Force Air National Guard. I was like, pretty sure it's Air Force. Don't want to guess and be wrong.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about kind of your experience there. So I guess what did, God calling you to that type of stuff, whether that's the phrase you would use at the time or what did that journey look like? And, now you serve kind of adjacent to chaplaincy and kind of how that became what you're doing. So, yeah, what's the story?
Sure. Yeah. So I think initially it was more a combination of things like both a family history of service in the military. I had grandfather, uncles that had served. I know my dad had always told me that he had wished he served. That was one of his big regrets. And then after September 11th occurred, there was just something inside of me that said, I need to do something about this, to serve, to make sure this never happens to people again. And I joined a little later. I was the old guy at basic training. I was 26 years old when I went, and because I already had kind of a life, I had a job, things like that.
Yeah, what were you doing before?
So I was working at a gym. I ran a commercial gym up in Harrisburg where I was the general manager. So I had just gotten out of school with an exercise science degree, putting it to use, and didn't want to completely give it up. So that's why I ended up going the reserve route, was because it kind of allowed me to do both,
Right.
So once I got in my initial career field, I worked in aircraft maintenance, which was fine, but it was a combination of, these jobs are available, here's what you qualify for. There were some financial bonuses for jobs that were in like dire need, and I was able to qualify for one. And so I took it, and it was fine. It was great, but it didn't really speak to me. And as I was, kind of processing through those first 6 years of like, what do I want to do next? Because I don't have to stay in this career field. It like something told me that I wanted to do something that mattered more to me, right? That just like had a deeper purpose. And I kind of remembered back to when I was going through basic training, one of the things that kind of helped me through that, because it's a stressful time. Everything gets taken away from you. You're cut off from the outside world.
I don't think anybody thinks it sounds easy.
That's okay.
It's like, you're just like, hey, you're going to work out every day for 6 weeks. No,
right.
Okay, I'm out.
Right.
Okay. I don't actually need to know anymore.
Right. And we're going to yell at you and break you
right.
down. And
yell at you. And, isn't there, I don't know how much is public versus like, don't you at one point, like, don't you get pepper sprayed or something? Or?
So, we went through the gas chamber and stuff like that. So, it's tear gas. Yeah.
Right.
So, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so
it's just like
it will clear your sinuses.
Right. Just like, it's like having too much garlic.
Right.
It's fine.
It's just like that.
Yeah. But no, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So, going through the tough time of basic and. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, there's very little that you have that you can hold on to, that you can keep with you, that you can cling to. And one of the few things that you can is your Bible. And I happened to bring my Bible with me, and I admittedly back then didn't read it much, considered myself a Christian, but I'm like, this is one thing I can have. I'm going to take it. And I took that along with a cross that my grandfather, who was in World War II, carried with him. And I took those two things with me to just have something to hold on to. And it was a reminder of my family history and a reminder of my faith. And between that and opening the Bible and getting in it, obviously, and then the other place that was the only place we could choose to go that our drill instructors couldn't be there with us was to go to chapel. And so lots of people went just because it was an escape. But for me, it really kind of relit something that had been I guess, kind of just smoldering. I wasn't on fire at that point, and was kind of through college and after college was in a really rough spot in my life, like not living the way I knew I needed to be living, not where I wanted to be, not proud of who I was. And so joining the military was kind of a way out of that, a way to get some structure back, get myself back in line. And it's also where I kind of reconnected with my faith. And, so through that, when the next opportunity came around to do something, I thought, well, we have this chaplain corps. I love going there. I love going to services. I love the people that I meet there and the chaplains. I wonder if it's something that I could do.
Yeah, you can get into.
Yeah. And so I checked, and at first there were no openings, and I just kept knocking and knocking and knocking until finally there was an opening, and whether they were just annoyed with me or thought I was a good choice, they let me in. So
yeah, and so that's chaplain assistant, because I didn't know this until you told me.
Yeah.
Chaplains don't carry weapons in the military.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm in a war zone as a chaplain, I am not armed. Am I less armed?
Yeah, you're considered a non-combatant. So
okay.
Even your military ID would have a red cross on it, just like medical would, that technically make you a non-combatant, a non-target, things like that. If you're captured, you're supposed to be released, things like that. But you also don't command troops, you don't carry a weapon, things like that. So while we do, as was called chaplain assistant, they recently changed it to religious affairs airman. Same job, cooler. Just different title, Yeah. We do carry weapons. We are considered combatants, but we also help with everything chapel related. So we help with the services. We do crisis intervention counseling, all of those kind of things as well.
Yeah. And there's another piece to your story where you've ultimately decided to finish out a master's in religious studies. I think I'm getting, you and I have a really similar degree.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know, but it gets called 20 different things. So.
Yeah, mine was Christian ministry.
Mine was Master of Arts Theological Studies with a concentration in Christian
ministry.
There you go. So it's the same thing. It's just a matter of what it's called. So you ended up going through to Liberty for that, but there's a neat story of kind of God's providence in the midst of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I felt this kind of urge, this calling to, go to seminary, to explore more, to do more with my faith. And I remember fighting it for years and really pushing it off and saying, not me, God, you've got the wrong person. Like, it definitely can't be me. And it got to a point where I had other people, whether it was a couple of members at the gym. One was a chaplain at the hospital that was like, did you ever think about, becoming a chaplain yourself or going back to school? I had one of my best friend's wife actually contacted me and was like, I had this dream that you're supposed to get a degree, become a pastor. And I'm like, and she's like, do you know anything about that? I'm like, no, nothing,
It's crazy.
Yeah, I've never heard this before. And, so eventually I got to a point where it was like beating me over the head, which is often what I need. And I remember saying, okay, God, I hear you. I hear this call. The problem is I can't just afford to pay out of pocket to go to school. So if I'm going to do this, I have some education benefits, and I had already got my undergrad beforehand, so I didn't use all of my education benefits. And I said, but I've already transferred some of these to my kids. So you're going to have to justify to me how I can feel okay with pulling these benefits back from my kids, even if that's a possibility. Right. But you've got to make it abundantly clear to me that you want me to take these benefits away from my children to use them for me, because that feels very selfish. So finished saying these prayers. About a week later, went into guard drill for the weekend, talked to our recruiting and retention office and said, hey, hypothetically, if I wanted to do this, is it possible, and what is the process? And I remember he said, you're not going to believe this, but Pennsylvania just became the first state in the nation to offer matching benefits through this military family education program, to where you no longer have to choose. You just got to do a 6-year service commitment, and we'll match the benefits for you and your dependents.
Wow.
And that was kind of like, okay, I got it. Like I said, you got to make it abundantly clear. That's abundantly clear.
Right. It's obvious at this point, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you've been serving for, I actually don't know this. How long since you started?
So this is my 18th year.
Wow. Okay. So your third tour, your third 6-year commitment.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if maybe you haven't decided. Are you planning on continuing, or what's the plan going forward?
Yeah, so I'll be in for at least yes, I'll be in for at least 20 because I need to get to that 20-year mark in order to get a retirement and all of that. Whether I'll stay beyond that, that's something my family and I have been discussing, and it kind of depends on where my career is at. If it feels like it's at a stalemate and I've gotten everywhere I'm going to go, we have to decide whether the benefits are worth continuing or if it's time to go. More than likely, there'll be a consideration of continuing on to, progress in my career.
Yeah, so talk about maybe that calling, right? Because maybe somebody is getting near the end of high school. They're kind of looking at, the student loan situation, and they're saying or maybe they're feeling a sense of call to serve, right? Because there are some nations in our world where you're required to serve for 2 years out of high school or whatever. Or I could just be making that up. I feel like Norway has a
there's definitely places that you are required. Yep.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because there's a lot of benefits. My sister and brother-in-law, my brother-in-law just retired. He was Air Force radar systems, and my sister was air traffic control. And I think my sister just did the first 6 years, and ultimately being in a tower, and also they were having kids and stuff like that. It was just like it was a lot, and she just ultimately said, I can be a support to my husband and what have you, but found a lot of joy in the military community, a lot of benefit in the military community. So talk about kind of your call to it, because there might be people listening who maybe come from a pacifist background or maybe come from and we're not saying anything's wrong with that, but those are obviously thoughts you process, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think for me, as I've said this to you before, if it came down to it, could I actually take life, right? Like, I think if you're going in the military, that's a question you have to ask yourself, right?
Sure.
Like, it's because you might end up in a situation. And, so how you've kind of processed that feeling and what that's looked like for you.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely not something that you take lightly, right? And it's definitely worth some soul searching. And I think you and I had talked before, and one of the things that I mentioned was that for most people, I think even if you join for the benefits, right, the college education assistance, things like that, there's still got to be a little something deeper inside you that makes you want to serve, whether that's patriotism, whether that's, a family history. But ultimately, I think, like, as a Christian, there's a piece to it of just serving people. And I get weird looks sometimes when I tell people this, but I truly believe military service is an act of love. And what I mean by that is it's relating back to John 15, where it talks about greater love has no man than this, to lay down his life for his friends. And hopefully none of us have to lay down our lives. But when you take that oath and join the military, you are literally saying, I will take that risk.
Right.
And there's something to that. I don't think most people just go, yeah, whatever. I think you have to really consider that is a real possibility, that you're going to be faced with danger and the prospect of death. But to say that, hey, I'm willing to take that on so that others don't have to. I know for me, referencing back to 9/11, it was, I never want to see that come here again.
Right.
And now I can't imagine my kids experiencing something like that. So whatever I can do to be a part of the solution to stop that, I want to be.
Yeah, I think that's good. And there's almost as you're talking, I'm thinking there's like a willingness also to like prepare in order to do that, right? Because I think we say, well, I want to protect my family, I want to this, and you know what I mean? But it's actually taking preparatory steps to do that and to prevent that is, and taking your talents and using them for the good of kind of, whether you think about it as our country or the person serving alongside you or, your family, your extended family. You're really, it's an act of service in I'm taking my talents and providing them for the good of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of roles too. That's the other thing is people always think of like people on the front lines, right? But talking about the chaplain corps, like our chaplains aren't those people, right? They're there caring for those people. They're just ministering to them. They're caring for them spiritually. They're making sure that they're doing okay. They're giving someone to talk to. They're just loving on people. So there are ways to do other things like that.
And I think specifically with chaplains, you're making a choice to be present in a time where you talk about it as a time where you were doing some soul searching. Right? Like
absolutely.
I heard a military guy talk recently about he
when he went to war, he signed a letter to his family that was like basically, in case I don't come back.
Yeah.
And when he wrote it, it was this soul-searching moment for him. And I think we have these, the old Roman saying, memento mori, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, remember, you will die. And this piece where you're right near it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be like morbid, but like when you're going to a war zone, or you're going overseas, you're in basic training, you're aware of your potential to die, and you're wrestling with that. And the choice for a chaplain or a chaplain assistant to be there in that moment with somebody is somebody has to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And somebody has to. I thought about this when I served on jury duty, and it was a crime against a child, and I remember, like, this is not comparing this to military service at all, but there was this feeling of, man, I don't want to serve on this jury. I don't want to look at these pictures.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part. I don't want any of this.
Totally understand.
But they got to get 11 jurors.
Yeah.
Like, you know what
Somebody
I mean?
has to do it.
And I think with, you talk about military service, it's interesting because we can have these intellectual conversations about it, but ultimately, like, somebody is going to be spiritually coaching a recruit through, major decisions of life. Somebody is going to, and is that going to be somebody who, is maybe not committed to the gospel? Is that going to, or is it going to be somebody who is choosing to serve Christ in that role?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's all kinds of opportunities. So last year when I was deployed, we were at a undisclosed location, and there were 3 service members that were killed while we were there. And we did the memorial service, the ramp ceremony, bringing the caskets onto the aircraft to send them back to the States. And following that, we were extremely busy in our chapel because people needed someone to talk to process this. I mean, a lot of these people are 18, 19-year-olds that are over here. This is their first real life experience out of high school, and the trauma that they can experience, they need that kind of loving care and someone to talk to them and tell them that there is still a good God that loves them and cares about them. And I think there's so much opportunity to help people, to love on people, to share the love of Christ. And I think there's opportunities with people that you may not have ever thought that there was an opportunity. But there's the old adage, there's no atheists in foxholes, right? And that's all because of what you were talking about. Like, suddenly things get real and you're close to it, and you're like, there must be something more than this. Like, and I just think it provides an incredible opportunity for us as Christians to be there and be a witness to those people.
Yeah. So talk for just 1 minute, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Like, if you were to talk to somebody who's saying, yeah, I've thought about military service, whether they are, late in high school, or frankly, there's been some guys in our church, there's Dave Lee, who like made the decision as I hate to say as adults, right? Because an 18-year-old is an adult, but as like a father to say, like, yeah, I'm going to go join the reserves. This is something I've always wanted to do. Talk a little bit about, like, if you were to say, here's kind of some thoughts to have in mind, what would you say to that person if they come to you and say, yeah, I need your advice, I'm thinking about this, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll speak to it from the perspective of the way people have worded it to me before. They're like, what would you tell your kids, like, if they came to you and said, I want to serve? And I have very mixed feelings on it, because obviously as a parent, that scares me,
right?
Because of all the reasons we were just talking about. But at the same time, I would certainly be encouraging for them to explore it deeper. And what I would encourage them to do is figure out, number one, why, right? Is it just about money? And is it the only way to get that money? Is it about finding structure and balance in your life? Is it about service to others? Like, what is that deep-rooted why? And if it's about service and an act of love and, just this internal drive, that's hard to turn off.
Right.
And that's hard to scratch in other ways. So I think that's one thing to kind of root out. And then I would talk to them too about, like, well, what do you want to do? And have you done enough exploring of different branches? Because I never heard of the Air National Guard till I almost signed on the dotted line with the Army. And my dad had talked to me about it, and I'm like, what is that? I'm like, is that the real Air Force? Is that like, I don't know what this thing is. So doing enough homework, because I know, as a young guy coming out of high school, I'm like, it's either Army or Marines, like, just because that's the options. It's tough. But then when you really think about, like, who you are as a person, what your skills are, where you'd be, best utilized. I mean, each branch has so many different options that I think it's about figuring out which one, suits your style, your life, and then really what the drive, the underlying, motivation is.
So how does, I might be putting you on the spot, how does someone come to kind of acquire that knowledge? Because my fear is if I walk into a recruiter's office and I ask for information, I'm going to be in the military before I leave.
Absolutely. They're going to tell you whatever you want to know.
Somebody else is going to bring my car home, and they've got one of those weird looking planes in the back, and I'm just I'm out of there.
Yes, you'll be on your way to boot camp before you
immediately in what I'm wearing.
Talk to other people who are in or who have. I would even say people who are currently in or who have recently been in, because things change all the time, right? Like boot camp is different from when I went 18 years ago, certainly from 40, 50, 60 years ago. So I think that's the best way. Find someone whether it's at church, at work, a friend, somebody like that, a friend of a family. Like I've had gym members that have said, like, will you talk to my nephew about it? And I'm like, yes, because it doesn't matter to me whether they join or not. I get nothing out of it. I want to help them, decipher the best option. So that's my recommendation. And then, explore all of the branches before you make your decision. But if you walk straight into a recruiter's office, like
you're in. So you want to be pretty settled in a general compass heading at least before you walk in that door. But all right, well, hey man, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I guess what service you guys attend if people want to come say hi to you and ask questions about the military, that type of stuff.
We're usually at the 11 o'clock.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, you could look around and all right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Know and Follow podcast. This podcast is a production of Grace Community Church of Willow Street, located at 212 Peach Bottom Road in Willow Street, Pennsylvania. If you're looking for a place to worship, we'd love to have you join us. Our services are Saturdays at 6 p.m., Sundays at 8, 9:15, and 11 a.m. This podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by Pastor Addison Roberts, the digital pastor of Grace Community Church. You can learn more about our church at gccws.net. Our theme music is Only the Brave Run Wild by Sounds Like Sander. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.